The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
It's official. Birds of Prey is dead. It's no more. It ceases to be.
Wakey, wakey! Rise and shine! This is your 9 o'clock alarm call!
It is an X franchise. No, not an X franchise, Deadpool. An X franchise. EX. Spelling. There's really only one thing left to say about Birds of Prey. How bad did it do in its second weekend? Well, not good is an appropriate answer. Birds of Prey to suffer a 50% plunge over holiday weekend. Last weekend, the sky was the limit for Birds of Prey, while opening weekend box office projections ranked anywhere from $40 to $60 million. There was secret hope that the film could pull a Joker and become one of the highest grossing films in the DC extended universe. Nope. Alas, such a bright future was not written in the film's colorful, shiny stars. The Margot Robbie-led supervillain vehicle only managed $33 million from 4,236 theaters. Thus, the fourth widest R-rated opening of all time fell with a thud, and the weekend doesn't look much better. Box Office Mojo projects Birds of Prey to fall second place at the box office this weekend with just $16.6 million, 49% drop. While the 4-day holiday weekend will likely push the film total to 21.7. That won't be enough for Birds of Prey's $64 million 11-day total to be anything more than a gigantic disappointment. As noted last week, Birds of Prey was projected to potentially have the 11th best 3-day of any DC film. If the quirky Margot Robbie comedy had indeed achieved $55 million, that would have been ranked ahead of Shazam, Green Lantern, and the Lego Batman movie. Instead, Birds of Prey's $33 million start fell down near Constantine and V for Vendetta levels. Even with a stronger start, it would have been difficult for Birds of Prey's lifetime domestic lifetime total to crack into DC's top 10 box office performers. The lowest hanging pieces of fruit on that list were Batman at $251 million and Justice League at $229 million. When we accounted for ticket price inflation, however, the lowest total jumped to $344 million in the form of Suicide Squad. What once seemed like an outside chance for Birds of Prey is now all but impossible to achieve. I guess we can finally say there's no hope for Birds of Prey. No extra long box office legs caused by positive word of mouth. No Valentine's Day surge brought in by all the fans that want a relationship like Harley and Joker. Nothing. It's over. Prior to this weekend, the blame game was being played. It was men, it was misogynists, it was Maybelline. No, actually it wasn't any of those things. It was just a bad movie that learned a very valuable lesson of don't shit where you eat. It seems like every Hollywood picture these days forgets this lesson. That's why we have a string of flops like the feminist-driven Ghostbusters, Charlie's Angels, and Terminator Dark Fate. And second, they get into defensive mode and blame fans before the films even come out. It's a formula guaranteed to work every time, and by work, I mean fail. Every once in a blue moon, a film comes along that bucks the trend of Hollywood smug, swallows its pride, and listens to fans. The newest film that listened to fans was Sonic the Hedgehog. There was a lot of talk when the film was initially revealed because it looked like this. Sorry. I can't handle that again. The original Sonic was so ugly and the backlash was so strong that the studio pushed back the release date of the film. It was a bad move as fans lost interest in the film and it failed miserably at the box office. Oh, wait a tick. That's the wrong universe. It was a good movie as fan interest increased and the Sonic the Hedgehog film opened stronger than anyone could have possibly expected. Here's the real story. Sonic the Hedgehog speeding to a $65 million opening weekend. Sonic the Hedgehog is speeding to a $65 million opening at the North American box office for this President's Day weekend, according to estimates. Paramount's action-adventure is based on Sega's video game character and has been pegged to generate $40 to $45 million prior to its launch. Should estimates hold, it could break the $54 million record set last year by Detective Pikachu as the best 3-day domestic opener for a video game movie ever. Originally slated to premiere November 8, 2019, the film suffered a brutal fan backlash over the design of Sonic, prompting Paramount and director Jeff Fowler to delay release in order to redesign the main character. The opening weekend results seem to validate the decision and for the movie, which carries an $87 million price tag. It bows this weekend in 41 countries overseas, making up about 60% of its international footprint. Morals aren't something we talk about here on this channel. Hell, if you know me, I don't have any. But the moral of this Sonic story is that listening to the fans isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. There's no way to justify how damn ugly the initial Sonic design was. It's the stuff of nightmares. It's the kind of thing reserved for the darkest depths of the internet. It's just gross. Paramount fixed the design, the film opened way ahead of projections, and we all rode off into the sunset. That would be nice if that was the case. But it's not. This is 2020, and we can't have nice things anymore. We've been talking about the anti-consumer movement in entertainment for years. It started with Star Wars. Lucasfilm allowed for there to be a very unprofessional pushback from creatives towards fans. Everyone from directors to writers of ancillary materials were jumping in on the fan bashing, and that emboldened the online writers to get in on the fun too. You had Esquire, Forbes, Screen Rant, and more coming at you with another smear, and then one day, the fans had enough. We pushed back and created this movement, the Fandom Menace, as we're known online, and called out Hollywood and their ardent defenders on their bullshit. The culture war we're engaged in is a never-ending battle. Shots are fired on almost a daily basis, but we keep moving forward. By the way, if you'd like to join us, you can. We're live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. and every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course. Now, no matter where the pushback comes from, we're ready to stand our ground. Just yesterday, a new challenger arrived, and now it's the BBC who's going after this fan, or consumer movement. From Sonic the Hedgehog to Star Wars, are fans too entitled? In the spring of 2019, Jeff Fowler announced that the titular character of his new film, the live-action adaptation of Sonic the Hedgehog, would be totally redesigned in the wake of fan backlash over its debut trailer. "Thank you for the support and criticism," he tweeted. "The message is loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design, and you want changes. It's going to happen." And then it did. The Sonic, which whistles its way into theaters today, no longer possesses a full set of human teeth, no longer possesses two little beady eyes, and in general, no longer embodies the traits and silhouettes of a 10-year-old boy who has been cursed by an old witch. He is now cartoonish, bright, alive. In the words of Fowler, this wouldn't have been possible without the fans. The ability of fans to shape and change the art they enjoy is nothing new. In 1983, the reaction of Arthur Conan Doyle killing off Sherlock Holmes was so intense that he eventually resurrected him 10 years later. Historian Greg Jenner, no relation to Bruce, author of forthcoming book Dead Famous, A Study of the History of Fame, has even tracked the characteristics of modern fandom back to the 1700s, when rival supporters of English theater actresses would compete for dominance like Team Aniston or Team Jolie. And to the 1920s, where fan groups would write thousands of letters to movie studios demanding their favorite actor be given better roles. It was the same thing, he says, as Sonic the Hedgehog having weird teeth and people going, "No, that's not the game I played as a kid. You need to fix it, or I'm not giving you any money." Yet, the unprecedented decision to redesign Sonic the Hedgehog to surrender so transparently to audience wishes represents something of a landmark moment in the modern relationship between artists and fans, the latter of whom, thanks to the connective power of the internet and a changing media landscape, has never been so influential, so vocal, and some would argue, so entitled. Should fans have this much say in the pop culture they consume? And if so, what does that mean for art itself? "I don't know quite how I feel about the audience being in on the creation of it while it's happening," said Jim Carrey, who plays Sonic's nemesis Dr. Robotnik when asked about it last year. "I believe in auteurs, I believe in creatives, I believe in having them do it. As far as something like a Sonic character, that's something people have a sense of ownership from their childhood, so of course they're going to get involved, if they can. We'll see if it's a good thing or a bad thing." Keep watching. Jim Carrey has changed his tone. The last decade or so has witnessed a huge change in the awareness, perception, and tools of fandom. In terms of television and film, the enormous success of Game of Thrones and the Marvel Cinematic Universe have introduced geek culture and its brand of participatory fandom to the mainstream. At the same time, the internet, and more specifically social media, have amplified fans' voices while also breaking down the boundaries between them and the artists they love/hate. Yet the extent to which the internet has changed the very nature of fandom is debatable. According to a leading media scholar, Henry Jenkins, whose 1992 book Textual Poachers is considered the founding text of fan studies, it has merely increased the scope and scale of the fan community, allowed for ongoing interactions amongst fans, and made the entertainment industry more aware of the kind of fan responses which have been occurring all along. Case in point, in 1968, Star Trek fans, a group who essentially invented the framework of modern fandom, orchestrated a huge and successful letter-writing campaign to save the show from cancellation. Then in subsequent years, they also popularized fan fiction as we know it, publishing stories in each other's zines, and pioneering the homoerotic literary subgenre of slash fiction. The term slash literally derives from the punctuation between Kirk and Spock. Now fans weaponize hashtags and online petitions to revive shows like The Expanse and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or take showrunners to task with criticism of their blind spots and choices. Perhaps one of the most profound changes of the last 10 years is the extent to which the entertainment industry has begun to exploit the passion of fan base for their own commercial ends. The industry needs fans more than ever before, explains academic Suzanne Scott, author of Fake Geek Girls, a study of the gender politics of fandom. They need fans to ensure big opening weekends at the box office. They need them as promotional labor to create more authentic excitement around a media project, or distinguish one text from the glut of content that we are constantly choosing between as consumers. On the more extreme end of the spectrum, they even rely on them as investors. A famous example being the 2014 big screen revival of cult TV detective drama Veronica Mars, a sequel made possible only by crowdfunding efforts of fans, which subsequently led to a 2019 TV return on the streaming service Hulu. But such a fan-guided approach to art also feels endemic of a time when a lot of mainstream storytelling has come to be regarded more as a product designed to service the consumer than a means of artistic expression. This kind of thinking, in turn, gives rise to the kind of behavior that has become known as fan entitlement. After all, when you buy a product, when you spend your hard-earned attention, dedication, and time, why shouldn't it be exactly what you wanted? It's a sense of ownership that was at the heart of the last 2 decades' most notorious pop culture controversies, the last series of Game of Thrones and 2017's Star Wars The Last Jedi. And what is surely not a coincidence were continuations of stories that did not involve their original creators and instead were overseen by professional writers who were fans, whose authority to tell these stories could be questioned. I'm going to skip the Game of Thrones point and come back to this article at another time because this isn't the first time that we've seen something like this published. And I want to get down to the deeper meaning of this, but it has a parallel to Sonic the Hedgehog that's incredibly important for today's content. The Last Jedi for her, however, was a bit more complicated. Director Rian Johnson, the second in the latest Star Wars trilogy, was a film that aspired to show that stylistically bold and thematically challenging filmmaking was possible within the constraints of the franchise system. Many critics and fans adored it, but a vocal minority, aghast at its rejection of nostalgia or inherited power, or the idea that an older Luke Skywalker would not be more complex than a leveled-up video game character, despised it so much they clogged the internet for months with vitriol and abuse. Kelly Marie Tran, whose character Rose Tico they especially disliked, even ended up leaving social media altogether due to sustained harassment. And so, in a craven capitulation to the worst impulses of modern fandom, J.J. Abrams followed Johnson's film with The Rise of Skywalker, a desperate and creatively bankrupt barrage of fan service which will forever serve as a reminder of the difference between giving fans what they want versus giving them what they need. They just can't stop making stuff up about The Last Jedi, can they? It's sad, too, because if they don't accept the truth, they can never move forward. I also find it really funny that the BBC, of all places, wants to talk about entitlement. The BBC is responsible for the atrocity known as Doctor Who. Now, I'm not calling Doctor Who an atrocity, just the most recent seasons. That's why it has record low ratings, BBC. The BBC and the producers of Doctor Who feel entitled to lecture the audience each week with progressive nonsense over a good story, and it's just not working. People also want out of the oppressive TV license. From a US perspective, BBC can go eat itself. The power of fandom is a wonderful thing when respected. It's a free guaranteed audience, it's free hype and publicity, and it's free focus testing. Sonic the Hedgehog was free focus testing, and look, the film's a hit. Jim Carrey changed his tune and chimed in on the Sonic redesign, and he had this to say. It turned out to be a co-op where everybody was in on the creation. I think everybody felt good about it ultimately because director Jeff Fowler had no ego involved at all. He just went, these people grew up with it, and it's important to them that we get it right. And I think it was just a much better movie because of it. Convenient. That's a very humble statement by Hollywood standards. If auteurs like J.J. Abrams and autists like Rian Johnson, DC, Lucasfilm, and Disney would just swallow their pride and listen to fans, to a degree, Star Wars wouldn't have had such a terrible time. The DCEU wouldn't be a neon nightmare, and the whole business of fan bashing would be shut down permanently. As I stated earlier, you should only listen to fans sometimes. You shouldn't indulge in weird shipping like Reylo, or anything disrespectful to the legacy of the character. I'm looking at you, Black James Bond. Sonic's redesign was the perfect example of redoing something until it's right. I bet the execs at Paramount are very happy they made the costly decision to have Sonic redesigned. Not only does the success of the film help public acceptance of more video game movies, it opens up the possibility for more sequels. Speaking of sequels, you know who's probably not going to get one? Birds of Prey. The producer of the film spoke out about the possibility of a Birds of Prey sequel, and she said the first film has to be successful first. Harley Quinn Birds of Prey co-producer Sue Kroll is less concerned with the possibility of a potential sequel or further spin-offs than she is with the floundering film being a success. When asked if she sees sequel opportunities, Kroll said she focused on Birds of Prey's release, but anything's possible. Well, look, we have to get through the release. This needs to be successful. But this is a big, expansive world, so of course anything's possible. Yeah, I think people would love to see more stories. No, we wouldn't! So we'll see, but of course it would be a very natural thing. But we haven't talked about it at all. Right now we're focused on getting this movie open, one step at a time. I think everybody's always concerned about being very respectful and mindful to the source material. Nobody wants to upset the fan base. The fans are very important, and their devotion and passion, obviously, has propelled all of these films. But I think that also the desire was to create characters that worked for the screen. This was initially Christina Hodgson's vision, and she was working very closely with Margot. And you want to be able to introduce aspects of the characters that are familiar and that fans will love, but also create some kind of dimension around them and tell the very best version of the story you can. And that was really the intention. It wasn't deliberate one way or the other, except to tell the best possible version of the story for a movie experience. And now I know people are always going to be upset. I think sometimes when you have a very faithful adaptation of anything, people are disappointed that maybe there's nothing new. And if you stray too far, people are upset about that. You have to try and find a balance. And I think for us, the win for us would be to create an exciting world that feels familiar and also unfamiliar at the same time. That's populated with these characters that people haven't seen on film before, that we're able to deliver on some of the things that people really want, but also give them things that are completely new. Man, after the movie's out, the fans are the greatest thing in the world. But before that, We were a bunch of sexist, racist, misogynist. Well, they didn't call us racist on this one, sorry. That's usually the rigmarole here. But they called us sexist, they called us misogynists, and now they're calling us great and vital to the film's success because it's failing. You know, it's really funny how both Sonic and Birds of Prey mirror each other. Both are adaptations, but one went the route of eventually faithfully adapting the source material to huge success, and the other was stubborn to a fault, and ultimately died a very early death. They say the good die young, unless you're Birds of Prey. Then, I say, good riddance. So folks, what do you think of this? Did you see Sonic? Did you see Birds of Prey? Which one was better? Let me know in the comments below. I think it's funny how these things always happen in the same way. Last week I was talking about how the film's probably going to fail based on the media, calling it a feminist film and the marketing tactics, and guess what? It failed. And now Sonic, which is faithful and really didn't take too many digs at the fans outside of Jim Carrey's one, I believe in auteur statement, it's a huge success. And even Jim Carrey himself has kind of changed his tune. Again, it's a case-by-case basis. You don't want to listen to every fan theory, every fan decry, every time a fan wants this version or that version. You have to pick and choose your battles. And it seems like DC and a lot of the feminist marketed films have always been choosing the losing battle. And well, when they lose, we all win. Why? Because we get good entertainment in the process, and bad entertainment drowns in its own smug. So folks, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch tomorrow night's High Council. We're going to have some awesome stuff in regard to Sonic the Hedgehog, some insider information, and more. I'll be back later in the week with more content, more videos, and more fun. So folks, thank you for watching. Enjoy your day, and as always, be excellent to each other.